No, yeah, no, just
You asked for it.
I am unnecessarily making a scene about it. That's all.
Okay.
Hoping to pop in later. Okay, yeah, Mike is going to join us later. Of course he will.
How's everyone doing?
Hey, Josh.
Pretty good.
All
Oh,
right.
finally off of work, which is nice. Give my brain a break, do something that's actually mentally stimulating.
Hmm.
Hey. Okay, yeah, I figured. Yeah, no, that's good. You're just in listening. Okay.
I have a question for all of you if you can answer.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have anything to do with voice acting. Is that all right? Or
Oh yeah, whatever. Ask what you like.
okay. Uh
Sorry, Josh.
oh.
We're all going to
Oh.
answer you at the same time. I hope you have a good filter.
Please, this is an important question.
What's up? What's up?
Um if you guys didn't know, I have autism and therefore I have extreme social anxiety and everything. Any mental illness related to autism, I probably have.
Okay.
I wanted to
Go on.
know, when you see all these bad news and all that on, like, YouTube or Twitter, what do you guys do to kinda tune it out besides voice acting? Like, 'cause
Hmm. Okay.
I don't know, it's like, I know what to do when it comes to dealing with stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
but it gets to a point where how can you how can you not worry about something that could affect you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I know that there are other people who are in the chat who have more life experience than me who will probably give you a completely different answer, which, again, all points of view are welcome.
Yeah.
The thing is I try to look at it as realistically as I can. I can only control certain things in life, right? Like
Mhm.
larger, bigger, more massive things that I can't do anything with. Um, it so actually, let me boil it down. My grandfather had a saying that I'm struggling to incorporate into my life, but I'm trying to more and more. And his saying is, if there is a solution to your problem, then don't worry about it. But if there's no solution to your problem, then don't worry about it.
Oh,
If
okay.
there's something that you can do, then your best course of action is to do the thing, right? If there's a clear path from beginning to end, it might not be comfortable, but if there's a clear path, something that you can do to get to the other side of the issue, then do that. But if you can't, if it is entirely outside of your control, then worrying about it is really only going to cause you more stress than you really need in your life.
Okay.
It's not in your control. What can you really do? I mean, it would be nice to be able to do something, but there are some things that you just come across in life you simply can't do anything about. And those are tough. Those are really tough situations. But the thing is worrying about it is adding to the tough situation without giving you any method to solve it, to handle it, to do anything about it.
Okay.
At least that's been my approach to it. That's been my philosophy. But again, everybody here is going to have their
So,
own
in
unique approach.
another manner of speaking, it's selective hearing. So, you get to choose what you focus on. So,
Okay.
if there will
uh,
be a certain amount of apathy, but again, is it impacting your life? How is it impacting your life? Sometimes I look at politics and I go, I want this to happen, I want that to happen, I want this to happen. And those things don't happen. And I go, but I want this to happen, I want that to happen, and this to happen. Or this war is going on and I want that to stop. That kind of stuff. But can I
Okay.
really impact those things from my seat in my chair? So do can I'm just gonna have to allow that to happen despite what I want
Okay.
because those things are happening and the information that it's happening again, if I look at my chair and what I can control, it's out of my purview.
mhm.
Okay. Again,
So
I'll keep saying it over and over. Michael, how much to hire you as my therapist? How much?
No,
How much?
no, no. I'm just
Hey,
some
So,
dude.
sorry I'm late. I don't know if you got my little message in the chat.
Yeah, it's a big
Josh, my
deal. It's a big
my
deal.
biggest suggestion to you is focus on something else.
Right.
Yeah,
I
Just
have
change your
plenty to
focus.
do, so
there you
I
go.
could
And
do that.
it's not your problem, so let it be somebody else's problem and
Right.
focus on what you like and what you enjoy. And you'll be like, "Oh, what? That's going on? I didn't even know."
Like what
And
we're doing
live like
now.
that. Yeah,
Yeah, there
exactly.
you go.
You know,
I
we're too busy doing our lives to worry about that.
mhm.
Okay, so basically just find something to keep yourself busy
Well,
any way you can, right? To
well,
keep
I
your
mean,
mind off of.
just really assess it. Like you gotta genuinely ask yourself, can I really do this thing? Can I really affect it? Can I really make a difference? If you can, sure, then start doing something to make a difference. If you can't,
Yeah, because
then
if there's what I love about that kind of question that you're asking, Josh, is it might draw you to a solution or
yeah.
to a issue, to a place where you can make an impact in it.
Hmm.
And it could be
Yeah.
calling you to make an impact. And that's a totally different situation than trying to ignore it.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, let's go back to the workout. Oh, enough talking about all the sad, soppy stuff. But I appreciate it.
Yeah,
I'll
that's
take
And
okay.
I'm
that
here.
feedback.
Hello.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Hello.
And again, look, if ever you need to, like my DMs are open. If there's anything that I can do to help out in any way, shape, or form, please feel free to reach out. I may be really slow to respond sometimes because, I
Well,
mean, stuff happens. There's life, but
yeah.
I'm always open to try to help out absolutely wherever I possibly can in whatever I can do.
All right.
Hey, you know what? The benefit to that is you already know, so there's gonna be no surprises.
Okay. All right. I'll keep that in mind. I'll keep it in mind.
All
Thanks.
right. All right. So, then, do I need to give a once over of how we do things here for anybody, real quick?
I think,
Anything?
well,
Sure, I'll take the once over. It's my
Okay.
first time in, so yeah.
Well,
oh,
welcome,
hey,
welcome.
look at that.
So,
Thank you.
here's how we structure it. We're gonna start off with cold reads, so everybody's gonna have a chance to read the script, just for however you want to. That's going to do two things. One, it's going to introduce you to the script, and two, it's going to give you, or it's going to establish a reading order that we're going to go through again. Then, once everybody has had the opportunity to read the script, we are going to then analyze it. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about usage and technique and anything that we can pull out of there to help us achieve the goal that the script has. And then we're going to go back through the same reading order that we established in the cold reads to do directed reads. So everybody's going to have a chance to not only um, you perform this in front of everybody, but also give some feedback and some insights as well. There are a couple of rules that we do follow during that directed portion. I will get to those if they become an issue. Otherwise, let's just go ahead and go for it. I'm going to start by asking for a volunteer. The cold reads work by I get one volunteer, and then whoever reads gets to choose who goes after them. So only the first person ever really gets to volunteer. Um,
I
so,
volunteer.
okay. Zaldorias will be number one. Um, we do stream this onto Twitch, and we do upload the VOD onto YouTube. We have a little bit of a following. We're not really monetized though, so we're not trying to make money off of your performances. It's more to have a I mean, when the recording decides to work with us, because sometimes technology is technology, but we use it to Hunger Games joke. No, it doesn't get that brutal, trust me. Um, but we do upload these to YouTube so that there's a record of the things that we discussed, and in case you did want to go back and take a look at what happened and what you did, and maybe get some extra notes from it, you can. So we have a number one volunteer. We're gonna go ahead and start up the YouTube stream, and then we will get this going. So let's start up. Hello and welcome everyone to today's workout. So, we are continuing Spooktober with an excerpt from an audiobook, Some Words with a Mummy by Edgar Allan Poe. We've already spent a little bit of time chatting and having some fun, so let's go ahead and dive into the reads, starting with Zildorius. Whenever you're ready, go for it.
Stripping off the papyrus, we found the flesh in excellent preservation, with no perceptible odor. The color was reddish, the skin was hard, smooth, and glossy. The teeth and hair were in good condition. The eyes, it seemed, had been removed, and glass ones were substituted, which were very beautiful and wonderfully lifelike, with the exception of somewhat too determined to stare. The fingers and nails were brilliantly gilded. Mr. Glidden was of the opinion, from the redness of the epidermis, that the embalmment had been effected altogether by asphaltum. But on scraping the surface with a steel instrument and throwing into the fire some of the powder thus obtained, the flavor of camphor and other sweet scented gums became apparent.
Oh yeah, you're choosing who goes next. Zildorius?
We'll go with Voice of a Tiger.
Yes. Are you going to be reading with us? I think you're still recovering, right? I think he's recovering
Then
from COVID,
Cassidy.
unfortunately. Okay.
Oh, it's my turn to read?
Yeah, go for it. Cold read whenever you're ready.
Okay. Odor. The color was reddish. The skin was hard, smooth, and glossy. The teeth and hair were in good condition. The eyes, it seemed, had been removed, and glass ones substituted, which were very beautiful and wonderfully lifelike, with the exception of somewhat too determined to stare. The fingers and the nails were brilliantly gilded. Mr. Glidden was of opinion, from the redness of the epidermis, that the embalmment had been effected altogether by asphaltum, but on scraping the surface with a steel instrument and throwing into the fire some of the powder thus obtained, the flavor of camphor and other sweet scented gums became apparent.
Okay. Who's up next?
Let's have Brennan read next.
Oh boy. I'm put on the spot. I'll do it. Sure, let's go. 1 second, I'm going to close my door. I'm coming through fine, right?
Yeah, no problem at all. Whenever
Yep.
you're ready.
Stripping off the papyrus, we found the flesh in excellent preservation, with no perceptible odor. The color was reddish. The skin was hard, smooth, and glossy. The teeth and hair were in good condition. The eyes, it seemed, had been removed, and the glass ones substituted, which were very beautiful and wonderfully lifelike, with the exception of somewhat too determined to stare. The fingers and the nails were brilliantly gilded. Mr. Glidden was of opinion, from the redness of the epidermis, that the embalmment had been effected altogether by asphaltum. But on scraping the surface with a steel instrument and throwing into the fire some of the powder thus obtained, the flavor of the camphor and other sweet-scented gums became apparent. I'll toss it over to you, Amanda.
Me? Okay. Stripping off the papyrus, we found the flesh in excellent preservation, with no perceptible odor. The color was reddish. The skin was hard, smooth, and glossy. The teeth and hair were in good condition. The eyes, it seemed, had been removed, and glass ones substituted, which were very beautiful and wonderfully lifelike, with the exception of somewhat too determined to stare. The fingers and the nails were brilliantly gilded. Mr. Glidden was of opinion, from the redness of the epidermis, that the embalmment had been affected together by asphaltum. But on scraping the surface with a steel instrument and throwing it into the fire with some of the powder thus obtained, the flavor of camphor and other sweet-scented gums became apparent. Let's go with Roddy.
Stripping off the papyrus, we found the flesh in excellent preservation, with no precipitative, yep, no precipitative odor. The color was reddish. The skin was hard, smooth, and glossy. The tooth and the hair were in good condition. The eyes, it seemed, had been removed and glass ones substituted, which were beautiful and wonderfully lifelike. The exception of some, the ex- fucking hell, the exception of somewhat too determined a stare. The finger and the nails were brilliantly glided. Mr. Gillidan was of the opinion, from the redness of the epidermis, that the embalmment had been affected altogether by asphaltum. But on scraping the surface with a steel instrument and throwing into the fire some of the powder, thus 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 obtained, the flavor of camphor and other sweet-scented gums become apparent. Fucking hell, that's all. Mark.
Okay, let me get the script up here. Stripping off the papyrus, we found the flesh in excellent preservation, with no perceptible odor. The color was reddish. The skin was hard, smooth, and glossy. The teeth and hair were in good condition. The eyes, it seemed, had been removed, and the glass ones substituted, which were very beautiful and wonderfully lifelike, with the exception of somewhat too determined a stare. The fingers and nails were brilliantly gilded. Mr. Glidden was of the opinion, from the redness of the epidermis, that the embalmment had been affected together by asphaltum, but, on scraping the surface with the steel instrument and throwing into the fire some of the powder thus obtained, the flavor of camphor and the other sweet-scented gums became apparent. Okay, Dejasha, it's all you, sir.
Alrighty then. Make sure I'm kissing my mic, basically. Stripping off the papyrus, we found the flesh in excellent preservation, with no perceptible odor. The color was reddish, the skin was hard, smooth, and glossy. The teeth and hair were in good condition. The eyes, it seemed, had been removed, and glass ones substituted, which were very beautiful and wonderfully lifelike. With the exception of somewhat too determined to stare, the fingers and the nails were brilliantly gilded. Mr. Glidden was of opinion, from the redness of the epidermis, that the embalmment had been affected altogether by asphaltum, but on scraping the surface with the steel instrument and throwing it into the fire, some of the powder thus obtained, the flavor of camphor and other sweet-scented gums became apparent. Oh,
All right.
Michael.
Then by process of elimination, it's me. Stripping off the papyrus, we found the flesh in excellent preservation, with no perceptible odor. The color was reddish, the skin was hard, smooth, and glossy. The teeth and hair were in good condition. The eyes, it seemed, had been removed, and glass ones substituted, which were very beautiful and wonderfully lifelike, with the exception of somewhat too determined a stare. The fingers and the nails were brilliantly gilded. Mr. Glidden was of the opinion that the redness of the epidermis... Mr. Glidden was of the opinion, from the redness of the epidermis, that the embalmment had been effected altogether by asphaltum. But, on scraping the surface with a steel instrument, and throwing into the fire some of the powder thus obtained, the flavor of camphor and other sweet-scented gums became apparent. All right. So there is our current reading order, and let's go ahead and break the script down a little bit. So, unfortunately, one of our attendees who actually has some really positive experience with audiobooks right now is not participating at the moment. So I would love to have picked your brain a little bit, Voice of a Tiger, but I understand the situation. That's perfectly fine. But let's talk about mic technique, shall we? So, what kind of mic technique should we be using on this? Voiceover, where we're more upfront on the microphone, or voice under, when we're less upfront, trying to divert somebody's attention towards something else?
Audiobook voiceover.
Yes. Yeah. Sometimes I ask these questions as just a like, duh, of course. But
Yeah,
you know,
it's
it's also
voiceover. It's like an audiobook reading.
Mhm. Yeah, you are the center of attention. Fun fact, more often than not, people tend to miss the fact that in any book, the narrator is a character in and of themselves. They don't have a whole lot of character moments necessarily, but they are also a character. So let's talk about this person. Clearly, this person is in the scene. It's almost like a first-person view of some kind. What can we tell about how they are approaching the situation? What can we tell about them, I should say, from how they're approaching the situation? Let's discuss who is this character.
I'm
Scientific
assuming he's like
assistant.
some sort of coroner, someone who works at a morgue, someone who definitely knows a thing or two about like dead bodies and the whole like embalming process.
Mr. Glidden's assistant.
Okay.
Very scientific, knowledgeable, bookish, but like she said, coroner type, or at least well versed with mummies.
Okay, so they're knowledgeable.
I mean, they're talking about papyrus and preservation,
Yeah.
substituted eyes. So you know it's
Attentive to
probably.
detail. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead.
No, attentive to detail. That's a good one. Detail oriented. Anything else?
Just to add to that, they're very attention to detail. They're very descriptive, so they're like really into this, really into this.
Okay, very descriptive.
I'd also like to
Procedural.
add that they were
Go ahead, Cassidy.
the description seemed for the most part pretty clinical.
Clinical.
Like
Okay. Yeah.
they weren't talking so much about like this was a person, rather just well, they seemed used to this. Like they do this a lot. If
Okay.
they were less experienced, they likely would have been disturbed by what they're dealing with.
Okay. Maybe then a little bit desensitized.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
word.
I'd say they're also very eloquent. You know, embalmment, you know, like a lot of like the words aren't really people like really anything that like people with average intelligence would, use in everyday speech, like perceptible, gilded, asphaltum, camphor, like stuff like that. He sounds very eloquent, the way that it's phrased.
Yeah, this character definitely. Um, I would say that they're definitely very academic. That's the way that I would describe them. Like in their descriptions and their approach to things, they seem like very academic.
Yeah, that was what I was going for. I don't always know what the right words are for things.
Oh no, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. You don't need to. That's why you're with a group. We leverage our brain power.
Right. Yeah, I was thinking very academic was the word I was looking for too, as well as it's a very procedural, descriptive. This is where we did. This is how we did it down. But I'm going to just go step by step and tell you what happened.
Right. Right. So he's- here's the real question. What could we do to add to the unsettling nature of what we're trying to go for? Because again, this person is describing a mummy, a dead body that has been preserved for thousands of years. And there definitely is some of that atmosphere of like an approach with death, essentially. That's kind of what we're looking at right here is their first approach with this person after they had died. Um the thing is of course this is as you can tell, this was written by Edgar Allan Poe, so it has more of those darker themes and that darker atmosphere to it. But what could we do on our end to add to that atmosphere? How do we try and communicate that? I know this is not necessarily the greatest snippet in the world specifically for that, but I still feel like there's some technique that we might be able to use to bring that out a bit more.
I think there has to be some type of breathy, shadowy, um, tempo, slow, dramatic kind of beat to the wording.
Okay.
You got to read it slow and steady and methodically, not unlike the character we are reading from the perspective of. Not unlike the character we are trying to embody,
Right. Right. That's actually something that I was going to bring up. Yeah, I think because there's the thing when a human being approaches death, when they in any form, it has this visceral reaction within us. There's always these emotions that come up, and those will change depending on your level of experience with it, of course. But that word and that concept has this sort of strong emotional reaction to us. We tend to try and look at this person as a person, as a human that they were when they were still alive, even though some people might have questions about that or whatever the case may be. But I think to add to some of that creepiness that we're going for, yeah, I really think taking a very clinical, uh, almost stoic approach to this would really help bring that out a bit more. And again, that's a character choice, and that's going to be mostly up to you. But um, that would be something that I would definitely look for as an interesting challenge here. Can you make this sound like you are really just academically thinking about the process of looking at what's going on with this person? Oh, Brennan, that's a good one. Add excitement to the lifelike eyes bit. Yes, that could be something to add in a little bit more of the that clinical sort of fascination with what's going on in front of you.
Oh, the glass? Ooh, beautiful.
Yeah.
So shiny. What is that, resin?
I also do definitely agree with slowing things down a bit. Because again, that's kind of the crux of voiceover, isn't it? Like, we always read things a little too fast. So it's kind of like natural that we have to just, in general, slow things down, take things a little bit easier because we need our audience, we need the listener, we need the person who's sitting doing whatever with their headphones in, listening to us take them through this world, we need them to really see what's going on. So, one of the things that I would challenge you to do with this script is to see the scene in front of you and interact with it yourself. Clinical but interested. This is a professional. Doesn't mean they can't be fascinated. Yes, yes. And you're right, Amanda. Slow and steady does win the race. But this is again, really good character acting of any type, and like we said, this is character acting. Really requires you to be in the world, to feel what your character is feeling, and I mean physically too. How are they moving? Where are they positioned? What are they doing? Are they, what are they wearing? The more context that you add to it, the easier it's going to be to just get yourself lost in specifically what is happening there and really dig into kind of the world that you're trying to paint for your listener. So, does anybody have any other comments or question about the script or any of the directions or anything like that?
Not that I can think of at the moment.
Okay. Okay.
I guess just a
Another. So sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Mark.
just a brief comment I have as far as kind of touching a bit on the fascination that this character has. I guess almost there's a sense of kind of like admiration, like this is beautiful in a death way. Like
Yeah.
that kind of gives me those vibes, and that's something I'm gonna try to work off of. It's fascinating on that side.
I have a feeling that this person may be neurodivergent and that dead bodies are their special interest.
Well, I mean, they could be. You don't necessarily need to be neurodivergent to be really interested in this, because
Well,
a
yeah,
lot of
no,
people.
I'm just saying I see myself in this
Oh, okay.
character,
Yeah,
you know?
if you want to do it that way, yeah, perfectly fine. But yeah, I think just having that clinical fascination with what's going on in front of you, that's really going to turn up the creepiness that we're looking for. Um, if you want to do an accent, if you think you can, you're more than welcome to. I I'm not going to do it again, but you know, if it's a cold read, I can do whatever I want in cold read. It's to loosen up. It's to loosen up. Sorry. But yeah, if you think you can keep up the accent, sure, you're more than welcome to go for it. But let's see. Is there one take on the character? Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. This is something that's super important. We want to know the goal for what we're doing. So again, this character is clinical, academic. They're knowledgeable. They're very detail oriented. They're descriptive. They're very procedural in the way that they do things. But at the same time, how you approach that is going to be entirely up to you, and that's going to be part of what makes your brand your own. So, however you want to structure this character, maybe they're just somebody who finds this fascinating and they manage to get into an expedition. Maybe they're actually like a professor and they've been studying this for years and years and years, and this is kind of like they finally get to apply it all. Maybe, whatever. The way you construct this character and talk about them and portray them in the script is going to be entirely your own call. And the one thing that's going to be super important though is to take us through the scene. Let us see what's going on. Point to things. Indicate what's happening. Use your body. Use the space that you do have to bring your expressions to life. Now, is there anything else? Any other questions, comments, concerns about the script so far? What can we do to clarify things? Okay. Well, then, if there is nothing else, let's go ahead and get back into the directed reads, starting with Zildorias. Whenever you're ready, go for it.
Stripping off the papyrus, we found the flesh in excellent preservation, with no perceptible odor. The color was reddish, the skin was hard, smooth, and glossy. The teeth and hair were in good condition. The eyes, it seemed, had been removed, and glass ones substituted, which were very beautiful and wonderfully lifelike, with the exception of somewhat too determined to stare. The fingers and the nails were brilliantly gilded. Mr. Glidden was of the opinion, from the redness of the epidermis, that the embalmment had been infected altogether by asphaltum. But on scraping the surface with a steel instrument and throwing into the fire some of the powder thus obtained, the flavor of camphor and other sweet-scented gums became apparent.
Okay, opening it up. What did y'all think?
Um, uh, I feel like I can definitely, like, feel the tone that you're setting for this scene. I feel like you're definitely on the right track. You've definitely, um I feel like you really embodied this character, but at the same time, it kind of felt flat? I don't know. It's hard to describe.
Okay. Anybody else feel the same way?
Outside of the excitement with the lifelike eyes line, it felt very the same beat, monotonous in that sense.
I agree with Amanda. The tone, it felt good to me in some places. Like you know where it's gonna go. But the tone just felt right, I guess, for this read.
So, Zoldoris, what were you seeing as you were reading through the script?
I was basically trying to visualize a what do they call it? Forensic scene, where they were taking apart and examining the body and taking off the layers as they were going through it. And
An autopsy?
that's the word. And some of it I felt was a little bit too fast. I think I got my tone
Not
okay,
asking you to judge
but
yourself on it. That's
oh
a
yeah,
violation of the
right.
rules. It's a violation of the
Thank
rules.
you.
I'm just asking you
Thank
what
you.
it
I'm
is
trying to
you're
listen, but you asked me a question. And I go a lot further than what was I seeing?
Yeah, no, it's
But
just.
the echo was I was in a forensic autopsy.
Okay. Were you part of the
I
autopsy,
was
or
an
were
ass-
you viewing?
I was an assistant to Mr. Glidden peeling back stuff and pointing things out, and I was dutifully recording those observations. Like I was repeating what Mr. Glidden had uncovered.
Okay. Okay. Hmm.
Which
So
I'm there in the
Just-
room, but I'm not doing the autopsy myself. So if you
Yeah,
want me to
you're-
do it differently, I could probably do, where Mr. Glidden's the assistant.
yeah, actually, I think that would be the right approach, because you're very close to being like. Because the thing is, yeah, your tone and your involvement in the scene is really good, but I think we can turn it up a little bit more. So instead of being Mr. Glidden's assistant, Mr. Glidden is your assistant. You are
There
the
you go.
one who's doing the autopsy. You're the one who's peeling back the layers and inspecting all of the little bits and pieces. With the gloves on, just gingerly holding things up to try to look at things closer.
Okay.
Whenever you're ready, from the top.
Stripping off the papyrus, we found the flesh in excellent preservation, with no perceptible odor. The color was reddish, the skin was hard, smooth, and glossy. The teeth and hair were in good condition. The eyes, it seemed, had been removed, and glass ones substituted, which were very beautiful and wonderfully lifelike, with the exception of somewhat too determined to stare. The fingers and the nails were brilliantly gilded. Mr. Glidden was of opinion, from the redness of the epidermis, that the embalmment had been effected altogether by asphaltum, but on scraping the surface with a steel instrument and throwing into the fire some of the powder thus obtained, the flavor of camphor and other sweet-scented gums became apparent.
Okay.
Was that different after I took off my headphones?
Yes, but there was one thing that, just one tiny change I would have loved to have heard you make.
Hmm.
The fingers and the nails were brilliantly gilded. I would have loved for you to approach that because it's again, brilliantly is always a positive thing, right? Like
Oh,
that
right.
word
Okay.
has a very uplifting and positive connotation. So I would have loved to have heard you give that a little bit like the fingers and the nails were brilliantly gilded, something that
Okay.
you were really admiring.
Right.
Because it kind of felt like a hanging detail that just slam cut you to the next idea. Overall, though, first off, good on you for taking off the headphones. Um, Secondly, I again, you're very, very, very close to this being like really, really, really good. It's just I think that one little change, just be really appreciative and as invested in the gilding of the nails and fingers as you are with those eyes, right? And I
Hmm.
think that would be a fun little way to keep adding to this clinical, creepy character that you're playing. But I'm gonna open it up. What does everybody else think?
I thought the first paragraph was a lot more natural this time around and sounded really, really good.
Mhm.
When
Yeah,
you
much
got
better.
to the second paragraph, it sounded like you just wanted to get through it at that point. I would imagine also it's a lot of big words in there and kind of a lot more clinical.
Yeah, it's different.
Anybody else? Okay, right back to it. From the top, whenever you're ready.
Okay. Stripping off the papyrus, we found the flesh in excellent preservation, with no perceptible odor. The color was reddish, the skin was hard, smooth, and glossy. The teeth and hair were in good condition. The eyes seemed to have been removed and glass ones substituted, which were very beautiful and wonderfully lifelike, with the exception of somewhat too determined to stare. The fingers and the nails were brilliantly gilded. Mr. Glidden was of opinion, from the redness of the epidermis, that the embalmment had been effected altogether by asphaltum, but on scraping the surface with a steel instrument and throwing into the fire some of the powder thus obtained, the flavor of camphor and other sweet scented gums became apparent.
All right, what did everybody think?
It just felt flat to me. I don't really know why.
Okay. And to answer the question, camphor is a chemical. So a quick Google search says a chemical that used to be made by distilling the bark and wood of the camphor tree. Um, I know that doesn't really help a whole lot, but camphor has a very distinct smell. It seems to stimulate nerves and help with symptoms such as pain and itching. Just a
So it kind of works the same way as formaldehyde.
um. It doesn't sound like it. It seems like it seems like it acts a little bit more like salicylic acid, like aspirin.
But it was used as an astringent to take to dehydrate stuff.
I think in this context, it's about the smell of it because
Yeah.
camphor has a really strong smell.
Camphor kind of sounds a little aromatic. Like it shouldn't be like creepy. It sounds like It reminds me of like sandalwood. They should make like Bath and Body Works. They could make like camphor, like lotion. Sorry, I'm rambling.
No, you're fine. Okay. Did anybody else feel? Because Amanda pointed out that it feels a little bit flat. Does anybody else feel the same way?
I could feel the attempt of the wonder there, but more in the first paragraph for me. I think that second paragraph is maybe just pretty tough, having to go from the fingers and the nails are brilliantly gilded, and I mean not switch up, but it seems to present a different thing because you're talking about the opinion of Mr. Glidden, and it shows something different. I don't know. Um, I could feel the effort though coming through, but it did fall flat for me.
Okay, so it's mostly that second paragraph then.
For me, yeah.
Okay. Okay. I
Well,
mean,
just FYI for the next readers, the first paragraph is totally him into it, and the second one is him refuting basically what Mr. Glidden's opinion was. Because
Well, why don't you go ahead
Mr.
and
Glidden
give?
says it's like, because of this redness, it's got this stuff in it. And if I scraped some of it off, burned it, and no, it's not. It's totally different. And look, there's more stuff in there.
Well, I think that this is more of a. It seems like it's more of a discovery thing. So it seems like Mr. Gluten kind of threw out his opinion, and is like, "Well, let's give it a try." They scrape the skin, and they realize, "Oh, it might not be that."
Yeah, again, you can take it either way.
Okay. Well, why don't you go ahead and
But
give us another
you
read of
want
that?
to,
Except the approach that I want you to try with this one is
yeah.
it's more of like an experiment. Like Gluten was of the opinion that this was the case, but when we tried it, turns out that wasn't it. Right? Give it that kind of feel.
Okay,
That
so
kind
they're
of music.
expecting Asphaltum but to find the camphor and stuff.
Yep. Yep. Let's hear that from
Okay.
just the second paragraph. Whenever you're ready.
Mr. Glidden was of opinion, from the redness of the epidermis, that the embalmment had been effected altogether by asphaltum, but on scraping the surface with a steel instrument and throwing it into the fire and some of the powder thus obtained, the flavor of camphor and other sweet-scented gums became apparent.
Okay. I feel personally that paragraph flowed a little bit better for you. But I'm gonna open it up. What did you all think? Okay.
I mean, I don't know. I can't speak on it too much. I do agree with you that it flowed for sure. Like it had those beats.
Mhm.
I, yeah.
All right, cool. No, I get it. This one, I guess this one's a little bit tougher of a script, huh?
Yes,
Hey,
so I'm getting so much good feedback. I don't know
you,
what to
you,
do with it.
you come in here for a challenge, right? That's what I hope.
I made it, so here we are.
Well, so again, I think in general, you're approaching this from the right place. Your character is in the scene, which is fantastic. It's what we're looking for. And it was subtle, but I did like the changes that you gave that second paragraph this time around. So I'm pretty happy with it. I'm cool with moving ahead, unless somebody has anything they'd like to hear different. But I'm guessing that might not be the case. All right, cool. Well, next up on the list is Cassidy. Cassidy, whenever you're ready, from the top.
Stripping off the papyrus, we found the flesh in excellent preservation, with no perceptible odor. The color was reddish, the skin was hard, smooth, and glossy. The teeth and hair were in good condition. The eyes, it seemed, had been removed and glass ones substituted, which were very beautiful and wonderfully lifelike, with the exception of somewhat too determined a stare. The fingers and the nails were brilliantly gilded. Mr. Glidden was of the opinion, from the redness of the epidermis, that the embalmment had been effected altogether by asphaltum, but on scraping the surface with a steel instrument and throwing into the fire some of the powder thus obtained, the flavor of camphor and other sweet-scented gums became apparent.
Okay. Opening it up. What did y'all think?
Definitely like the tone you took for the entire thing. I think my nitpick is just slow it down a little, especially at the start, and follow through
That
all the
was
way to the end because you kind of the apparent you kind of drop that right at the end.
yeah. I noticed those things too. It was kind of like when I started reading, I was like, "Whoa, okay, that's way too fast." And then
Wait a minute, don't break the rule.
Yeah, don't violate the Dan rule now. Yeah,
I,
it's
I
okay.
mean,
It
I
happens. Go
well,
ahead. Go ahead.
um,
Yeah, it's difficult. Here's my feedback. Um, your pacing was consistent. It wasn't creepy. So maybe you want to try for a little bit more. But at the same time, I thought you were very happy to be there. So that's cool.
yeah, I will admit, no.
No, go
It's
ahead.
hard to describe yourself. I understand this. It's hard to.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Cassidy.
Oh, the rule.
I say just
Well,
ignore the rule for now and
yeah.
just explain like what your thought process was going into this.
I'm. I don't really know how to sound creepy, basically.
Okay. Okay. Man, that's perfectly fair.
Can you try like lowering your voice a little bit? Not like lowering like the pitch of your voice.
I don't think
I,
that would really do it.
I don't know.
So here's the thing. Let's go ahead and define creepy a little bit, and let's see what we can do to try to hit that. So when you think of creepy, Cassidy, what do you think of? Just in general, just a general thought of like when somebody says creepy, what's the first thing that pops into mind?
Honestly, the first thing that pops into my mind is a weirdo in my DMs.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. Um, when it comes to a creepy sound, what are some things that you think of like in that front too?
I guess part of my issue is like, mm, well, seem to think like sometimes when I when people hear my voice for the first time, especially in like online voice chats, their
Mhm.
first response is they'll think that my voice sounds rather cute, which is kind of the opposite of what we're trying to do here.
Okay, okay.
Cassidy, can I offer a suggestion?
Sure, go ahead.
What's your creepiest or horror movie you've voice that you've ever heard?
Um, couldn't. Mm,
Okay. You
Is
do
there a
you ever
voice
really?
that's ever frightened you?
Yes, but it's so impossibly different from mine.
Well, this is we're not. I'm not going to give you an advice to mimic it. My point is to think of that and project what that character felt like in your head. Be that character while you
Mm,
speak these words, and it will come through despite what you think of your voice. It's kind of weird that way, but that's the way it works. If you'd like to try that.
It- one thing about sounding one way is, and this is something that I know we've actually talked about here on the practices before, is that the sound of one's voice is a feature. It's not necessarily the defining point. Um, the thing that makes a really good delivery in any voice, in any sense of voiceover, is your mindset, is where you place yourself mentally. Um, because you'll have people who have voices that seem to completely um, mismatch a character, but if they can get themselves into the mindset of that character, then it's less about necessarily the natural sound of their voice, because unfortunately there are plenty of people who have those like really sort of deep grumbly voices who lean so heavily in on that that it makes for some um really limited performances. The thing is the sound of your voice is again only a feature. It is a part of what makes your brand your brand. Um, what we're trying to do here is we want you to put your mind in the scene more so than the physical sound that you have into the scene. So I'd like to know, when you were reading it, what were you seeing? What was going on in front of you or around you? Or were you just kind of more focused on trying to get through the script?
let's see. I, mm, yeah, I'm, I'm still kind of learning how to do all this, like,
Okay. And that's perfectly fine. Again, it's totally fine. I'm just wondering if you were seeing a scene or anything going on in your head while you're reading it.
like, mm, I don't know about while I was reading it.
Okay.
Like, I was trying to think about those things during some of the previous reads and when we were discussing,
Okay.
and I was trying to keep some of that stuff in mind. It's
Okay. Right. Again, this is and you're y- y- it's fine. It's fine. We're not looking for perfection here. Um, so let's see. Hmm. Do you like writing, Cassidy?
um a little.
A little? Okay. Other than voiceover, do you have another like creative outlet that you like to get your hands on?
Mm, not right now, no.
Okay, okay. Um, because the thing that I would love for you to try to do is more like you don't watch much TV or anything?
I do watch some TV.
Okay, okay. So I want you to see this scene as like a TV, as an actual show. So like the camera may have different angles. It's kind of like that old-timey sort of sepia-ish lighting, where it's a little bit dark and the colors are a little bit muted, and you have these two, these two people looking over this thing, and they're doing their own thing, and the narration is happening in the mind of one of them. Have you seen scenes like that?
Yes. I
I mean, if you're feeling a bit overwhelmed, that's totally fine. We can move on for now if you want to.
I
Okay, it's okay. Um, Take a breath. If you'd like to, just let me know, and we can get back to that read. But would you like to hear other people go next?
um
Here, I'll bookmark your
I
spot.
should
Okay.
probably go get something to eat.
Okay. No problem. Thanks for being here.
It was good being here.
It was good having you. Thank you. All right, moving right along. Brennan, you're up next.
Oh boy. What have we got? Let's see. Stripping off the papyrus, we found the flesh in excellent preservation, with no perceptible odor. The color was reddish. The skin was hard, smooth, and glossy. The teeth and hair were in good condition. The eyes, it seemed, had been removed, and glass ones substituted, which were very beautiful and wonderfully lifelike, with the exception of somewhat too determined to stare. The fingers and the nails were brilliantly gilded. Mr. Glidden was of opinion, from the redness of the epidermis, that the embalmment had been affected altogether by asphaltum. But on scraping the surface with a steel instrument and throwing it into the fire, some of the powder thus obtained, the flavor of the camphor and other sweet-scented gums became apparent.
Okay, opening it up. What did y'all think?
Probably the best read so far, but not quite creepy enough.
Creepy it
It
is.
was a consistent delivery, but I think everybody's having a problem with that became apparent at the end. They just kind of fall off.
Brennan, what are you seeing when you read through this?
I am doing the actual examination of the body. Oh, I'm standing over it and I'm going through like each body part and commenting on it.
Okay. I want you to slow it down just a little bit more, and I want you to be really interested. I want you to be more personally invested on everything that's going on and on things that you're discovering.
Okay. Anything else? Be obsessive. All right, let's dial it up a little bit.
Go for it.
Stripping off the papyrus, we found the flesh in excellent preservation, with no perceptible odor. The color was reddish. The skin was hard, smooth, and glossy. The teeth and hair were in good condition. The eyes, it seemed, had been removed, and glass ones substituted, which were very beautiful and wonderfully lifelike, with the exception of somewhat too determined a stare. The fingers and the nails were brilliantly gilded. Mr. Glidden was of opinion, from the redness of the epidermis, that the embalmment had been affected altogether by asphaltum. But on scraping the surface with a steel instrument and throwing into the fire some of the powder thus obtained, the flavor of camphor and the other sweet-scented gums became apparent.
Okay, and how was that one?
Felt different.
Shut up, Brennan.
Okay.
Anybody but Brennan. What did you guys think?
That was better. It was consistently what we've talked about since we started. And I'd only say you're adding the other instead of just and other, which
Another.
makes it slightly different, but not too big of an impact.
Yep.
Anybody else? Okay. This time, make it perfect.
Wow. Not but perfection.
Come on, Brennan, you've got this.
Same sort of
You do
interest in a body, or
you are you're practically a forever DM. Come on, you've done stuff like this before.
you want me to dial it up even more, or
Let's hear it. Why not? You've given us some solid reads, but let's really like dial it up. Like paint the scene for us as players.
stripping off the papyrus, we found the flesh in excellent preservation, with no perceptible odor. The color was reddish. The skin was hard, smooth, and glossy. The teeth and hair were in good condition. The eyes, it seemed, had been removed, and glass ones substituted, which were very beautiful and wonderfully lifelike, with the exception of somewhat too determined a stare. The fingers and nails were brilliantly gilded. Mr. Glidden was of opinion, from the redness of the epidermis, that the embalmment had been affected altogether by asphaltum. But on scraping the surface with a steel instrument and throwing into the fire some of the powder thus obtained, the flavor of camphor and other sweet-scented gums became apparent.
Okay. That was an interesting, like slightly different take on that read. What did you all think of it?
I think that was best, but the tempo you're starting with stripping off the papyrus has then slows down a whole bunch as you move on. So that part
Gotcha.
might be one area you can strike the tone right at the beginning to give yourself a little bit more time throughout. But you start off kind of like out of the gate, I'm going to go fast. And then all of a sudden it slows and you get to
Okay.
that good pace after a little bit. But, and you're skipping right through it seemed. So it sounds like the eyes seemed instead of the eyes, it seemed.
Gotcha.
Something like that. But other than that, it's a great voice to use for this, and it really does set a stage.
Why don't you give yourself a lead in?
Boy, I don't do lead-ins, Michael. What are you talking about?
Well, that's the problem. You can do lead-ins. Fine, I'll give you a lead-ins. Lead-ins. I will give you a lead-in.
Okay.
Your lead-in will be, and then we began the autopsy.
Okay. Same delivery as the last one? Okay. And then we began the autopsy. Oops. Autopsy. It's autopsy, right? Sorry, it's throwing me for a loop right now.
Don't overthink the word. Don't overthink the word. Just
right.
It's mostly again just to get the initial speed that you have out of the way, so that when you start reading, you're at a good pace. The lead-in doesn't have to be perfect, and don't overthink it. Just
it's autopsy though.
Autopsy.
Just so, yeah. It's
There we go. Thank
autopsy.
you. I knew something was up.
Autopsy. Yeah.
Autopsy.
No. Autopsy. It's not
Autopsy.
autopsy. The emphasis is on the first syllable. Autopsies.
Autopsies?
Yeah, like you did multiple autopsies, not autopsies.
Autopsies.
He's doing it.
I can't do it. It's my accent, I think. Autopsies. autopsies? Anyway, we examined the body. Right. And then we examined the body. Stripping off the papyrus, we found the flesh in excellent preservation, with no perceptible odor. The color was reddish. The skin was hard, smooth, and glossy. The teeth and hair were in good condition. The eyes, it seemed, had been removed, and glass ones substituted, which were very beautiful and wonderfully lifelike, with the exception of somewhat too determined a stare. The fingers and the nails were brilliantly gilded. Mr. Glidden was of opinion, from the redness of the epidermis, that the embalmment had been affected altogether by asphaltum. But on scraping the surface with a steel instrument and throwing it into the fire, some of the powder thus obtained, the flavor of camphor and other sweet-scented gums became apparent.
Much, much better.
Cool. Oh, it's all good. All right, let's move along, guys. I will self-direct myself. It's great. No. Yeah. I mean, I thought that no. All right. In that case, I would just move it along, right, Michael? I've done a lot of takes.
All right. Well,
Move
if you
it
want to
along.
stop, you can stop here. That's perfectly fine.
No, let's give others a shot. Let's go.
Okay. Okay. Amanda, you're up.
Okie dokie. Gulp. Stripping off the papyrus, we found the flesh in excellent preservation, with no perceptible odor. The color was reddish. The skin was hard, smooth, and glossy. The teeth and hair were in good condition. The eyes, it seemed, had been removed, and glass ones substituted, which were very beautiful and wonderfully lifelike, with the exception of somewhat too determined a stare. The fingers and nails were brilliantly gilded. Mr. Glidden was of opinion, from the redness of the epidermis, that the embalmment had been affected together by asphaltum. But, on scraping the surface with a steel instrument, and throwing into the fire some of the powder thus obtained, the flavor of camphor and other sweet-scented gums became apparent.
Okay, opening it up. What did you all think?
Bright and lively. And you noticed the stutter step you had to take during that, affected altogether by asphaltum. But pace seems pretty standard. Seemed good, but I'd dial it down a little bit slower, a little bit more dark, and you might feel better about it.
I could go for something gritty. I was trying to go for that, but my voice is naturally very lively.
Well, again,
So yeah,
it's fine. It's the mindset that we want to hear more so than anything else.
yeah.
So, I think, and tell me if this doesn't resonate with you, but I think what we want to hear is morbid curiosity. Do you think you could do
Morbid
that?
curiosity as in necrophilia, or no,
If
that
you want
was
to
a
take
joke.
it that dark,
That was
Why
a
not?
joke.
No.
That was a
I'm
joke.
thinking more like campfire story than.
Well, yes,
Yeah.
a long time ago.
No, more like
Well,
this is I can't quite break away from this. I need to know more. I need to see more. Right? Like it needs to be a solid fascination for your character.
really?
Yeah,
Mhm.
curiosity. What's under
Like
the
that.
skin? What's
Yes.
there?
Again,
What
you
is
took the
this?
time to peel away the papyrus from around the face and the hands and who knows from where else. So
Noticing ornament that.
whenever
Okay.
you're ready, from the top.
Stripping off the papyrus, we found the flesh in excellent preservation, with no perceptible odor. The color was reddish. The skin was hard, smooth, and glossy. The teeth and hair were in good condition. The eyes, it seemed, had been removed, and glass ones substituted, which were very beautiful and wonderfully lifelike, with the exception of somewhat too determined a stare. The fingers and nails were brilliantly gilded. Mr. Glidden was of the opinion, from the redness of the epidermis, that the embalmment has been effected altogether by his phantom. But on scraping the surface with a steel instrument and throwing into the fire some of the powder thus obtained, the flavor of camphor and other sweet scented gums became apparent.
Okay, opening it up. What did y'all think?
I'll go. Why not? There were some nice
Please.
moments in there, actually. I really enjoyed it. I think there's so much room. I know everyone has been, I don't know what the word I want to use is, maybe a little bored with the script, but there's so much you can do with it. And I loved that you took some opportunities, like especially at the end, the flavor of camphor. It was almost like you actually smelled it or kind of tasted it in the mouth as the powder burned. It was kind of nice. Um, I would say the parenthetical is getting lost. So the eyes, it seemed. I think for audiobook stuff, it might be worth respecting the parenthetical there. It really is an aside. Also, to give some context, I don't know if you guys discussed it during the workup, but all of this is written in the past tense, which means all the events have already happened. And in this book, the mummy comes to life when they electrocute it, and they have a conversation with the mummy, which is hence the title. So all of this is written with the knowledge that actually this mummy is a person who's going to be alive soon. That's why the eyes, it seemed, have been
Really?
removed. Yeah, and then they think that they're glass eyes, but they're not. They're real eyes, and that's why they look wonderfully lifelike. It's because it turns out that it's a mummy that's going to come to life in a moment. So anyway, I think you can even play with more of the knowledge that the narrator has of the scenario. And then I would only ask one question: are you surprised by any of the findings that you make? Um, so for embalming, it would be surprising if it had been embalmed with camphor exclusively, and it would be surprising, for instance, if the epidermis were very, very red. So I think you can bring a little bit of that morbid fascination in even more. I really enjoyed it, though. I thought it was a nice step in the right direction because I think there's a lot actually going on here. So
Oh, thank you.
I will stop talking at length and and
I know
That would-
somebody said that my read felt stiffed. What do you mean by that?
It stuttered when you first read the embalmment had been affected altogether by asphaltum. It just all the words weren't there, and all all of the words written weren't spoken as written. So it was just had a little stutter, not stiff. And then secondly, the pacing that you started and what Mike told you would have been helpful. But
I was trying to go as
I thought it
steady as
was
I could.
Oh, I know. No, don't even criticize yourself. I'm just saying at that point, the first read, second read, you
Right.
nailed it. So
Oh, thank you.
you're welcome.
So, does anybody want me to read it one more time or?
Yeah, go for it. One more.
Just one quick comment.
Please.
You just blaze through stripping off the papyrus in that last raid. Just slow it down or use a, free life as Michael always wants me to. Ugh.
Okay. Stripping off the papyrus. Hold on. Stripping off the papyrus, we found the flesh in excellent preservation, with no perceptible odor. The color was reddish. The skin was hard, smooth, and glossy. The teeth and hair were in good condition. The eyes, it seemed, had been removed and glass ones substituted, which were very beautiful and wonderfully lifelike, with the exception of somewhat too determined a stare. The fingers and the nails were brilliantly gilded. Mr. Glidden was of opinion, from the redness of the epidermis, that the embalmment has been effected together by asphaltum, but on scraping the surface with a steel instrument, and throwing the fire some of the powder thus obtained, the flavor of camphor and sweet scented gums became apparent.
Okay. Can you retake the last section from after the semicolon, but on scraping the surface with a steel instrument to the end?
And on scraping the surface with a steel instrument, and throwing to the fire some of the powder thus obtained, the smell of camphor and other sweet scented gums became apparent.
Okay. Opening it up. What did y'all think?
Yeah, very nice. There are just a few technical errors that I would recommend you correct. So, unless the audio is dropping out, the word is all together. In that second paragraph, had been affected altogether. I'm just hearing together from you, so just a note. I don't think you need to repeat it or anything, just so you can see it. And then you said smell, not flavor, in the last line. But otherwise, obviously, I normally, you know me, I don't care about words that much, but in an audiobook, it's kind of important that all the words are exactly as printed. So yeah, that's all. Otherwise, I liked it very much. I think it's a very cool doctor character, or scientist character type person you've created here. So that's very nice.
Thank you. It kind of was the audio, so yeah. Thank you very much. That really means a lot.
Yeah, no, I liked the character that you constructed for this. It seemed like you really were seeing what was going on in the scene itself, so always a good thing. But yeah, the only thing that I would have you do, I don't think you really need to do another retake of it because I liked where you were going with it, and that would be something to probably to work on a little bit more separately. But yeah, it is the technical issues when it comes to some of the words because again, audiobook narration, when it comes to audiobooks, the script is king. And let me tell you, going back at redoing sections of audiobook work can be exhausting. So just
Yeah, I
be
have a feeling it'd be a
really,
pain
really
in the
careful
ass
with
to
that.
redo and redo and redo.
All right. Well, I think we're good. Let's go ahead and move it right along.
Thank
Riley,
you.
would you like to read?
I'm sorry, not today.
Okay, no problem. Mark, you're up.
Okay, let me get the script up. Here we go. Stripping off the papyrus, we found the flesh in excellent preservation, with no perceptible odor. The color was reddish. The skin was hard, smooth, and glossy. The teeth and hair were in good condition. The eyes, it seemed, had been removed, and the glass ones substituted, which were very beautiful and wonderfully lifelike, with the exception of somewhat too determined a stare. The fingers and nails were brilliantly gilded. Mr. Glidden was of the opinion, from the redness of the epidermis, that the embalmment had been effected altogether by asphaltum. But, on scraping the surface with a steel instrument, and throwing into the fire some of the powder thus obtained, the flavor of camphor and other sweet-scented gums became apparent.
Okay, opening it up. What did y'all think? Wow, this one is a tough one for people, isn't it? Okay.
I'll go. I think you have such a beautifully sonorous voice for this. Even if though I can, it sounds like the mic you might be on is a computer mic or maybe a USB mic. But bro,
Yeah.
if you were on like a nice microphone, oh my goodness, I can tell you would sound delightful. So the voice suits this very nicely. A voice that people could listen to for long periods, which is good for audiobooks. But it was all the same. It was very one note. In terms of tempo, in terms of pace and rhythm, it was all very matter of fact, and it didn't sound like you had much of an opinion on anything. So I think it's okay to have a little bit more personality, given that this is in the first person and you're not just a strict narrator. So give it a little. Again, you don't want to overdo it because it is an audiobook, and you're not trying to outdo the words of the author, but at the same time, I think you do have a little license here to bring some personality to the read, and I
Okay.
encourage you do that.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah, my feedback is going to be very similar. Like the thing that really struck me is that your pacing and overall tone is really, really solid for this. Very easy to listen to, very easy to follow along with. Again, that slower, controlled pacing makes it so much easier to walk somebody through the scene. But yeah, I think what I want you to turn up with this next read, the little dial that I want you to uh, tick up a couple of notches, is personal involvement. This is something that really fascinated you when you were first looking at it. Like, this was a discovery nobody else was seeing, period. And you got this opportunity.
Okay.
Whenever you're ready.
Stripping off the papyrus, we found the flesh in excellent preservation with no perceptible odor. The color was reddish. The skin was hard, smooth, and glossy. The teeth and hair were in good condition. The eyes, it seemed, had been removed and glass ones substituted, which were very beautiful and wonderfully lifelike, with the exception of somewhat too determined a stare. The fingers and nails were brilliantly gilded. Mr. Glidden was of the opinion, from the redness of the epidermis, that the embalmment had been affected altogether by asphaltum, but on scraping the surface with the steel instrument and throwing into the fire some of the powder thus obtained, the flavor of camphor and other sweet-scented gums became apparent.
Yeah, no, that was pretty much landed like perfectly right where I wanted to hear it. What did you
Okay,
guys
good.
think? Okay,
Think-
cool.
I was sorry, it took me a moment. I'm just going to reiterate. I think you fall into a very rhythmic pattern of speech. Part of it is
Okay.
probably just your natural way of speaking. We all have one. We all have a rhythm that's sort of endemic to our personality and our voice. But again, for audiobooks, you have to imagine someone's going to be listening to you for hours at a time. And we just want to be wary of becoming background noise, almost drone-like, which I don't think, again, for a short passage like this, it doesn't really happen to us as we listen to you now. But I do have a feeling that if it were to go on for an hour like this, or even 10 minutes, I would be like, okay, it would be easy to tune out, which is not what we want.
Okay.
So again, you don't want to overdo it. It's just that a lot of your sentences had the exact same structure. It was like da 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 da, and it just went like that over and over again. So
Okay.
again, find places for variance depending on the opinion that your character adopts of the things that you're saying. There were little nuances in it that I really did appreciate, like the fingers being gilded. You added a little touch of spice, and I think it's just, dot it in there even a little more. We don't want to overseason the script here, but I think, again, you can take a little more risk with the read.
Yeah. Mark, how much experience do you have with voiceover?
Let's see, 2 months at most.
Hey, for 2 months in, look, whatever you're doing to learn or practice or improve your skills, you're heading in the right direction. You've got a
Thank
really,
you.
really solid base of skills going on right now. I would definitely agree with Mike in saying that, yeah, you have the place in the scene down, and you have your character's motivation down.
Okay.
But yeah, sprinkling in a few changes into how you express those opinions throughout the read would really make it a lot more listenable over the long term.
Gotcha.
But that is really, really like subtle, detailed work that I would suggest, if you don't already have one, to work on with a one-on-one coach.
Sure.
A one-on-one coach is going to be the best thing that you could do for your voiceover career, period, wherever you're at. And I think that that's just going to add to what you already have going on right now, if you don't already have one. If you do, hey, for 2 months, you definitely have something very substantial to work with for sure.
Thank you.
All right, let's move it right along. Over to me. Stripping off the papyrus, we found the flesh in excellent preservation, with no perceptible odor. The color was reddish, the skin was hard, smooth, and glossy. The teeth and hair were in good condition. The eyes, it seemed, had been removed and glass ones substituted, which were very beautiful and wonderfully lifelike, with the exception of somewhat too determined to stare. The fingers and the nails were brilliantly gilded. Mr. Glidden was of opinion, from the redness of the epidermis, that the embalmment had been effected altogether by asphaltum, but on scraping the surface with a steel instrument and throwing into the fire some of the powder thus obtained, the flavor of camphor and other sweet-scented gums became apparent. Opening it up.
What she said.
Okay, interested but not creepy.
So, how creepy are we looking to sound? Real? Okay, next level creep status. Okay, got it. So then I agree because I don't know.
I mean,
don't
ignoring the
get
context of the entire story, yeah, we just want to creep this up.
Okay. So then, in that case, then yeah, you could stand to be creepier, I guess. What I was going to say is you did a great job playing with pitch and some changes in volume and timing. But again, I feel like maybe it's just the nature of the script, but it doesn't sound like anybody wants to play with rhythm or speed that much. Everything was delivered at the same speed, pretty much, and the same sort of rhythmic delivery. And while it was very nice to get some words that really popped out, especially from the start, excellent preservation and then brilliantly gilded. You're hitting the adjectives, and clearly that I think that works just fine. But I'd like to hear you explore some changes with speed and rhythm. Nothing overdone. I'm not saying rush through certain sentences or anything like that, but pick a spot somewhere where you can do something where maybe the character gets arrested by what they're seeing and they have to take a moment and slow down. I'm not sure where you will do it, but I'm curious to find out.
Okay. I think I can do that. Anybody else? Anything else? All right, let's see what I can do. Stripping off the papyrus, we found the flesh in excellent preservation, with no perceptible odor. The color was reddish, the skin was hard, smooth, and glossy. The teeth and hair were in good condition. The eyes, it seemed, had been removed, and glass ones substituted, which were very beautiful and wonderfully lifelike, with the exception of somewhat too determined to stare. The fingers and the nails were brilliantly gilded. Mr. Glidden was of opinion, from the redness of the epidermis, that the embalmment had been effected altogether by asphaltum, but on scraping the surface with a steel instrument and throwing into the fire some of the powder thus obtained, the flavor of camphor and other sweet-scented gums became apparent. Opening it up.
I guess I'll agree with the creepy thing. I don't think it needs to be creepy, but I guess again, it's Halloween, it's Spooktober. You can get scarier with it. But I did. So thank you so much. I thought it worked so well when you slowed down on the eyes. It really made me as the listener take notice. Be like, okay, this is an interesting part that I should really be listening to. So that was a very nice touch. I even think there can be other moments. You picked the one, and again, we don't want to overdo it. Obviously, we're not trying to make fools of ourselves out here, but that was a very nice touch, and I guess I would encourage you as well as everyone else, that even in audiobooks, there's moments that you can take for that. Another example might be, for instance, in the last paragraph when it gets to scraping the surface with a steel instrument and throwing it into the fire, some of the powder thus obtained. If you're a scientist type, this might be easy for you to describe, so you might kind of speed through it. But anyway, that's just one specific example. I liked it, Mike. I mean, I guess get creepy, I guess. I don't know. I guess you could get scary with it. Twirl your mustache. Wait, who was it?
Pretend you're Frankenstein.
It was Amanda who said, pretend you're attracted to the mummy. That would creep it out real all the way. For sure.
Oh boy. All right. Let's. Wow. Okay. Anyways. Stripping off the papyrus, we found the flesh in excellent preservation, with no perceptible odor. The color was reddish, the skin was hard, smooth, and glossy. The teeth and hair were in good condition. The eyes, it seemed, had been removed, and glass ones substituted, which were very beautiful and wonderfully lifelike, with the exception of somewhat too determined a stare. The fingers and the nails were brilliantly gilded. Mr. Glidden was of opinion, from the redness of the epidermis, that the embalmment had been effected altogether by asphaltum, but on scraping the surface with a steel instrument and throwing into the fire some of the powder thus obtained, the flavor of camphor and other sweet-scented gums became apparent. Okay, did that turn up the creepy, or am I still falling short on that?
You turned up the creepy on paragraph 1 real good.
I agree with that.
Silly and maybe
Yes.
uncomfortable. You did a great job.
Yeah, that was creepy as heck.
Paragraph 1 was the standout creep, though. The paragraph 2, you kind of settled into less creepiness, but for sure, number 1, you're like, ooh. It was definitely like, yikes. So that was nice.
Yeah, okay. So it was paragraph 2 that didn't have enough creep.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
it was
for-
a little. It was a little bit, but not as much as paragraph 1.
Brandon, what were you going to say?
I think for paragraph 2, I'd say, like, let's say that you are of the opinion that Mr. Glidden would have been wrong anyway. Like, you knew he would be wrong and you would be correct by throwing it into the fire, and the results then showing.
Okay.
That might give it a little more personality than just.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's see. The fingers and the nails were brilliantly gilded. Mr. Glidden was of opinion, from the redness of the epidermis, that the embalmment had been effected altogether by asphaltum. But, on scraping the surface with a steel instrument and throwing into the fire some of the powder thus obtained, the flavor of camphor and other sweet-scented gums became apparent. So did that hit it?
I have mixed reactions.
Okay. Got it. I have mixed reactions. Refuses to elaborate. Cool.
Nope, that's all I'm gonna say. I asked for it and I got it. That's all there is.
Okay. Well, as long as you felt that it was delivered. All right. Well, then we'll go ahead and move it right along then, shall we? Mike, you joined in late, and we're going to put you on the spot here.
Let's do
we're gonna
it.
Start you off with a cold read.
Sure.
Go for
Well,
it.
whatever. If people want to comment on the cold read, I don't care. I've heard you
No,
guys do it
no,
enough
no
times.
commenting on the cold read.
Okay, fine.
Just have fun with it.
Okay. Stripping off the papyrus, we found the flesh in excellent preservation, with no perceptible odor. The color was reddish, the skin was hard, smooth, and glossy. The teeth and hair were in good condition. The eyes, it seemed, had been removed, and glass ones substituted, which were very beautiful and wonderfully lifelike, with the exception of somewhat too determined to stare. The fingers and the nails were brilliantly gilded. Mr. Glidden was of the opinion that, from the redness of the epidermis, that the embalmment had been effected altogether by asphaltum, but on scraping the surface with a steel instrument and throwing into the fire some of the powder thus obtained, the flavor of camphor and other sweet-scented gums became apparent.
Okay, opening it up. What did y'all think? Oh, no.
I don't...
Nope.
Y'all can go... I
You
mean...
just said.
I just said no commenting on the cold read, and that was a knee-jerk reaction. And we're gonna rewind that. All right. Yeah, exactly. We're just gonna take all of that. Just gonna eat my crow.
Okay.
Did you want a rundown of everything we talked about, or?
I mean, I think I have a sense. Autopsy. He's morbidly interested. You want creep factor. Yeah. Okay.
It's less creepy and more like wine taster, you know?
Sure. Like some weird sort of, strange, morbid elegance, maybe. Okay, we can see.
It's
Wine
elegant,
taster.
proper, but it's not chilling.
Okay, got it. Not
Yeah.
super scary. Not like
Stripping off the papyrus.
yeah, nothing
Oh,
creepy.
Not, no.
Yeah.
You have to find
Okay.
that spot.
All right. Well, whenever you're ready.
Okay.
From the top.
Stripping off the papyrus, we found the flesh in excellent preservation, with no perceptible odor. The color was reddish, the skin was hard, smooth, and glossy. The teeth and hair were in good condition. The eyes, it seemed, had been removed, and glass ones substituted, which were very beautiful and wonderfully lifelike, with the exception of somewhat too determined to stare. The fingers and the nails were brilliantly gilded. Mr. Glidden was of opinion, from the redness of the epidermis, that the embalmment had been effected altogether by asphaltum, but on scraping the surface with a steel instrument and throwing into the fire some of the powder thus obtained, the flavor of camphor and other sweet-scented gums became apparent.
Okay, opening it up. What did y'all think? Okay, then if nobody else is going to say anything, I will. Mike, you mic'd the hell out of that script.
Okay.
What I mean is that, so you feel, I know you feel really,
You
really
mic'd
comfortable
the
when it comes
hell
to
out of
characters.
this.
Yeah, you really did. I know you feel really, really comfortable when it comes to characters, but the thing is you tend to fall into the same delivery pattern where you're very expressive at the beginning, and then you slow down, and then you get right back up to the speed, and then you slow it down a little bit again, and then come right back and do the exact same thing.
Mhm.
It was a technically good read, but it was very safe for you and your capabilities.
Okay.
I'd like to see you really dig into like the actual fascinations of the things that are really happening in front of you right now. I liked some of the flourishes that you gave it, but I want to see you poking and prodding around the body, touching the surface to feel the smooth and glossy skin. Like
Okay.
I want to hear more of a like visceral reaction to you interacting with this all too lifelike corpse.
Okay. Got you. One question. The fact that it's in the past tense doesn't bother you.
Nope.
So it's not happening live. But you want me
The
to
thing
make you
is
feel like it is.
Well, no. The thing is it had a strong impact on you because as you know, you understand later on what happens. I guess that this thing comes alive and you actually interact with it. But at the
Yeah.
time, that was your fascination. You discovered something nobody had ever seen before, and you
Gotcha.
felt it and you smelled it, and
Can
you
do
know,
that.
yeah, I just want to know what your like
Sure.
real like visceral sensory reactions were to it.
You got it. You got it. Anyone else?
In your cold read, you did a sniff. In the second read, you didn't.
When did I sniff?
No, it was a really good sniff, like you were doing the perceptible odor, but during the first read, it was right after the color was reddish.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't
So
even
if you
know
did
I
like
sniffed. That's
that, I
pretty
think it'd
funny.
be really cool if you had it in like doing the just before perceptible odor.
Well, you see, you guys should have talked about the cold read. Fuck you guys. I'm kidding. I didn't say fuck.
And I really
I'm
like
kidding.
how your character seemingly goes like really distracted when you go into wonderfully like lifelike.
Yeah.
But you do that again with Gilded, so I'd
Got it.
try
We'll
to
change it up.
differentiate that. Yeah.
You got it.
All right, whenever you're ready from the top.
Sure. Stripping off the papyrus, we found the flesh in excellent preservation, with no perceptible odor. The color was reddish, the skin was hard, smooth and glossy. The teeth and hair were in good condition. The eyes, it seemed, had been removed, and glass ones substituted, which were very beautiful and wonderfully lifelike, with the exception of somewhat too determined to stare. The fingers and nails were brilliantly gilded. Mr. Glidden was of opinion, from the redness of the epidermis, that the embalmment had been effected altogether by asphaltum. But on scraping the surface with a steel instrument and throwing into the fire some of the powder thus obtained, the flavor of camphor and other sweet-scented gums became apparent.
Okay, opening it up. What did you all think?
That was a really good read. I
Yeah.
enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, that was solid. That was solid, definitely.
Took the words right out of my mouth.
All right, well, I mean, you knocked it out of the park. What can we really say? Do you want to do something fun with it?
Sure, we'll do a full-on creep.
Do it. Go for it. Whenever you're ready, from the top,
all
to
right.
wrap this whole thing up.
Okay. Wait a second. Stripping off the papyrus, we found the flesh in excellent preservation, with no perceptible odor. The color was reddish, the skin was hard, smooth, and glossy. The teeth and hair were in good condition, yum. The eyes, it seemed, though, had been removed, and glass ones substituted, which were very beautiful and wonderfully lifelike, with the exception of somewhat too determined to stare. The fingers and the nails were brilliantly gilded. Mr. Glidden was of opinion, from the redness of the epidermis, that the embalmment had been effected altogether by asphaltum, but no, on scraping the surface with a steel instrument and throwing into the fire some of the powder thus obtained, the flavor of camphor and other sweet-scented gums became apparent.
Well, you got a resounding positive appraisal from
For the record, of course, no one would take that for this audiobook, just so we're all clear. No one would take that.
We have
Can
great
you
comedic timing,
imagine?
which is great.
Can you imagine doing that for an
Wonderful
entire
comedic timing.
audiobook?
Yeah, can you? The guy is like, oh my goodness, incredible. You know, full creep mode.
Oh man! Although that would be a really interesting book if it was actually like some kind of extended look at Igor, from
Yeah.
Frankenstein. Except
Yeah.
it started out when Igor was like not as creepy and like slowly devolved, so the person
It
reading
gets
had
creepier
to,
as the book goes
yeah,
on.
had to become creepier
Yeah.
and creepier as time went
The
on.
mummy.
Boy, that would be
Anyway.
interesting. But all right, well, that brings us to the end of our reading list. So that means the broadcast portion of the meetup is over. But that does not mean that we're done, because we did have somebody who just joined in, and we're going to go ahead and let them have a turn, but we're going to do that off stream. So for those of you watching us, thank you all so very much, and we'll see you next time.
Okay, adios.
Real quick, though, I did want to shout out some of our
Bye.
supporters before we did wrap this up. We have James, Claire, Shannon, and Mark. Thank you all so very much for the support. It really helps us out, and we're planning some really big things in the future, and you guys are directly helping out with that. So, once again,
Woo.
thanks, and we'll see you next time.